When a man found several bear cubs trapped in the crawl space under his house, he had to think fast and save the helpless animals and return them to their worried and agitated mother. But something happened later that left the man shocked yet amazed. Jonah had always loved his home in the beautiful state of Tennessee. He had worked hard to earn everything that he had and was very proud of his house. In fact, he had built it himself from the ground up. He had started planning to build his own home in his late 20s. By his mid-30s, he had produced plans, gotten all the necessary permissions, and started constructions on the foundations that would become the house he lived in to that very day. If he was being honest with himself, Jonah loved getting his hands dirty and getting involved in all the minute details of building his house. But there was one thing at the forefront of his mind all the way through the designing and building process: bears. Bears lived around those parts of Tennessee, and they were often seen roaming around the countryside and even streets. They were large, dangerous, and destructive, so Jonah made sure that his home was as bear-proof as humanly possible. Jonah thought of it all: a raised porch that would be more difficult for them to access, metal sheeting around the bottom of his house that bears would find tricky to destroy or pull off, and even a locked-away compartment for the trash cans so they couldn't go digging for food in them. The garden was covered in sensors and bear deterrent devices, and Jonah had spared no expense in making sure that everything was as protected as possible. He had covered all of his bases in order to safeguard his home from these furry predators. And since he moved in, Jonah had had absolutely no issues with bears. He had of course seen them in the wilderness beyond his property, and on a few occasions he had seen a bear casually wander into his garden only to be scared away by the sensors. But by and large, bears had not bothered him or his property. That is, until the fateful day they came in groups. One day while cooking breakfast on the stove, Jonah could smell something funny. He quickly realized that there was a gas leak somewhere, so he hurriedly opened up all the windows and turned off the electricity to prevent any sparks setting fire to the gas in his house. Jonah was ready to go and try to fix the issue himself, but he decided against it, as it was safer to get a trained professional to look over the problem and check that it was fixed properly. So he called a workman and explained the situation, and within half an hour he knocked at his door, ready to fix the issue. The pipes led down into the crawl space under the house, so that's where the workman would start his investigation to find out what had gone wrong with the gas line. As Jonah led him around the side of the house to the small grate that covered the crawl space hatch, he noticed it had been pried away and now lay on the ground next to the open trapdoor. Both men peered into the hole, and much to their shock and surprise, they saw a large black bear sitting at the back of the crawl space. But she was not alone. She had 3 small cubs with her too. Jonah was shocked. He had safeguarded his entire house from bears, but neglected to protect the crawl space. The black bear looked frightened and confused, so Jonah quickly called the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, who quickly sent out rescue helpers. Looking into the hatch, they realized that the bear had damaged the gas pipes in order to give its cubs a warmer and more comfortable space to live and hibernate. This is what had caused the gas leak in the house. The space was obviously not right for the mother bear and her cubs though. It was far too small underneath the residential property, and it was slowly filling with gas, which may poison the poor animals. The workers laid bait and traps in order to try and lure the small family out. Hopefully they would then be able to find a new place to hibernate, somewhere safer and less damaging. They left the traps overnight and just prayed that when they awoke in the morning, the animals would be captured and they would be able to take them to safety. But when Jonah woke up the next day, he found that the mother bear had somehow avoided all the traps and made its escape back into the wilderness. Sadly though, in its panic haste to escape, she had left all 3 cubs behind, all of which were curled up in the corner of the crawl space, looking shocked and terrified. The rescuers arrived and deemed it safe enough to go into the crawl space and rescue the cubs by hand. They put them in cages and transported them to a local veterinary clinic in order to be checked over and looked after until their mother returned, if she returned at all. The youngsters were all checked over, and it was found that they were all females. They seemed happy and healthy enough, and it was clear that their mother had taken very good care of them up until that morning. But the vets had to make plans for them in case their mother didn't return. There was a chance that she could forget about her cubs altogether. at which point they would need to find a surrogate mother for the 3 children. Luckily, there was a recently bereaved black bear under their care that would be the perfect mother candidate should the time ever come. They waited several days and there was no sign of the mother. Jonah was checking his cameras and keeping an eye out, but she didn't make a reappearance. However, only hours before the cubs were to go to their new home, the vets got a frantic call. It was Jonah. The mother bear had reappeared on his doorstep, mournfully looking at him and making sad, low noises as if she were pining for her children. She looked thin and not in the best of shape, and it was obvious she had not been looking after herself while she waited for her children. The display of motherly love and loss really was touching and upsetting. The mother bear lay dejectedly on the lawn in front of the house. The bear deterrence seemed not to bother her. She just looked like a sad mommy who wanted her children back. Every now and then, she would make that low, sad sound as if shouting for her children, but there was no reply. But when several cars pulled up, she stood and looked hopefully back at Jonah. The passengers of the car slowly and gently got out, trying not to spook the mother bear. They then removed 3 cages, each containing a cub. They placed them gently on the ground and opened the latches, allowing the cubs to roam free before they quickly dived back into the cars and to safety. The cages had been opened from a safe distance, but the 3 cubs rushed back to Jonah's house where they were reunited with their mother. The bears celebrated being brought back together by hugging and roaring. After several long moments, the mother walked back towards the window that Jonah was peering through. She looked at him appreciatively and raised a paw to gently touch the window. There was nothing aggressive or even scary about this. It was literally just a mother thanking someone for looking after her children and returning them to her safely. Seeing the incredible act of gratitude, Jonah raised his hand and placed it against the bears with only the glass of the window separating them. She looked deep into Jonah's eyes in a way that no animal had ever looked at him. The bear was trying to communicate something to him. What it was, he wasn't quite sure, but he knew it was something meaningful and primal, a thanks for what he had done to bring the cubs back to her. Jonah finally understood that while it's true that bears are dangerous and scary, they are also loving, thoughtful, and emotionally complex. They have wants, needs, and desires and loves, just like humans do. And while he had spent many years protecting his home against bears, fearing them to be brutish monsters, the truth was that they weren't. They were beautiful animals. And it surprised Jonah that as the reunited family slowly walked away, he felt a tear roll down his cheek. This really was a magical moment, one where he connected with a beautiful black bear. So now it's over to you. What did you think of this incredible story? Have you ever encountered a bear before? Would you worry if you were separated from your family? As always, we love to hear from you, so be sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below.